My husband and I were on a road trip coming back to Louisiana from Iowa. We would drive in 4-hour shifts while the other person slept in the back of the car. It was about 3 a.m. and he woke me up to start my shift. I looked around and didn't see another car in sight or even a street light or building. He had taken an alternate route that he thought would be faster. Finally, we come across a small local gas station with a single light on. It was closed, and our car was the only one there. We pull over, and as I'm getting ready to open the car door so we can switch places, my husband tells me to hold on. I look up, and from behind the back of the gas station, a man wearing rags was shambling towards us quickly, not quite running, which made it even scarier in a zombie-esque way. I told my husband to hurry and drive away. He was intrigued though. He just stared ahead as the guy got closer and closer. I started freaking out and screaming for him to go until he did. As he drove away, I looked behind us until the gas station disappeared. As far as I could see, the man followed the car at the same odd pace he was walking at until I could no longer see him. Gives me the chills big time. This one happened to my parents about 20 years ago now. Both of them were driving out to Death Valley to a hotel for a weekend in the wintertime, and they had left late in the day and were going to arrive at the hotel at night. The hotel was about 30 minutes outside the actual Death Valley town center, and when they finally found the place, it was completely abandoned. My mom gets spooked easily and didn't want to go and look, but my dad's into that sort of shit and got out of the car. Right after he walks around the back of the building to look around, a man approaches my mother's side of the car. He claims his motorcycle broke down and that he delivers newspapers to Death Valley. My mom looks around and sees no motorcycle anywhere, and this hotel had nothing near it, not one building. This guy was begging my mom to come get the newspapers and take them to a hotel in town. Otherwise, he'd lose his job. He had the stack in his hands and wanted her to open the door so that he could give them to her. My mom's getting serious vibes from this guy now and refuses, locks all the doors, and tells him to go away. He continues to beg. Finally, my dad comes around the corner and the guy panics a bit and just hands them over to my dad quickly and leaves. They drive off and they spot the guy start walking off into the desert. They finally get to the hotel to deliver the papers and end up booking a room there. When they hand over the newspapers, the lady at the desk tells them they don't get any newspapers delivered to the hotel. My parents open up the stack and look at the front page. It's a newspaper from 1954. One time, I was driving back home. I see something in the road that looked like a person. No houses near me, no cars, nothing. As I got closer, I could tell it was a person. They had on a black trench coat. I slowed down out of fear of hitting something or someone. As I got closer, I could tell they had on a hockey mask. They tried standing in front of my car in what I could only assume was an attempt to get me to stop. I went around and they were very close to my window. It scared the shit out of me. I don't know if it was someone trying to randomly mess with people driving by, or if they could have been someone looking to harm me. They even could have been trying to steal my car. Still, I'll never forget looking out of my window and seeing that Jason mask looking back at me. About 2 years ago, my buddy and I decided to go on a drive. It was a hot summer night, and we were bored out of our minds, so we picked up some cigarettes and went on a late night drive. We decided to drive to the top of the mountain. The base of the mountain is about an hour drive from where I lived, and it takes about another hour to drive all the way to the top, where they have a restaurant bar. This is in Norway, by the way. It was pretty late, around 3 a.m. in morning, so we knew the bar would be closed, but we thought we would just chill on the benches, have a smoke, and take in the view at first light. So, we get to the base of the mountain and start driving up and round. The road twists around the mountain till you get to the top. So when you reach a turn, you can barely see round the corner. It was pitch black darkness. Only the road was visible due to the street lights. But apart from the road, the edges and mountainside were barely visible. We had been driving for about half an hour. Everything was pretty enjoyable. Absolutely empty roads, complete silence. It was just relaxing. As we turn one of the bends, I get this very uneasy feeling as I see something, definitely a person, sitting on a boulder at the edge of the road. My friend sees this as well, but keeps driving. We park the car right opposite this figure, engine still running, and my friend calls out, "Hi there, are you okay?" I have to admit, I was still pretty scared, so I didn't say anything. No response. Then the figure looks up in our direction, and we get the fucking shit scared out of us. We saw that it was a woman, wearing a plain white dress, with very long, beautiful hair, but her face was 3 times the length of a normal person's face. Her eyes were completely blank, and she had a smile on her face. I swear to God, we both felt so fearful that we were completely paralyzed. We couldn't yell or even communicate, not even a single word. It felt like we couldn't move. I don't know how he found the courage to press the gas and get the hell out of there, but I do remember that when we both got home, we had a very high fever, and we were like that for a couple more days afterwards. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side. The real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I'd been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock. 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time, it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rear-view mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate. Fuck that, I thought to myself. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a fucking car parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey, you, get the fuck out of your car, now." I noped the fuck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. A few years ago, my best friend and I were sharing a house out in the country. One of her children was being fussy and wouldn't sleep, so we decided to take a drive down some back roads. About 10 minutes after I start driving, we are pretty far into the boonies of my city, where the street lines are few and far between and everything is terrifying. I only glimpsed them, but I swear to God, I saw a pack of 3 or 4 of the most mismatched creatures ever. They were like little pigs with human teeth and eyes, but their skin was an odd shade of pink, and it was wrinkled, as if they had all rapidly lost weight. I screamed and floored the gas pedal all the way home. As we neared my house, about 4 houses down, I saw another similar creature that was the same shade of odd pink and had the same texture of skin. This one, however, was taller and standing upright on 2 legs, half hidden in the shadows. We rushed the kids in, but neither of us slept that night. The next day, someone or something had slashed 2 of our car's tires. My friend was driving without his glasses in the middle of backcountry Maine one night. For those who have never been, you drive hours without seeing civilization, just trees and trees. He was in a daze when he saw something up ahead in the street. He stopped because he couldn't quite make it out. It was moving, but moving very slowly. He got curious, moved real close to it on his truck. "Is that a baby?" Sure enough, it was a baby. He gets out of the truck, just stunned. Surely this baby is abandoned. He walks over there and goes to pick it up. It's a baby doll being dragged slowly by a string. He got out of there fast as he could. Back roads in Maine are scary at night. I was driving down one around 2 a.m. a couple of years ago and slowed down to take one of the 500 curves in the road, when all of a sudden there was a car stopped in the middle of the road, no lights on, and the driver's door open. I stopped and hit my high beams to see if everything was okay, but noticed 2 guys coming out of the woods beside my back doors on both sides, crouching down and going towards my doors. I slammed the gas and almost sideswiped the car they left in the middle of the road. No cell service in the area. Also, it is so dark that if they came out of the woods a couple feet behind my car, I probably would have never noticed them. Could have ended very badly. It was 3 a.m. and I was driving home with a friend of mine. There was very little traffic on the interstate. Up ahead, on the side of the road, I see what looks like a man sitting on a guardrail. I got a horrible feeling in my gut. I had the feeling this guy was going to do something bad. I honestly felt as though he was going to jump in front of our truck to commit suicide or something. As we get closer, he stands up and moved into the next lane. As we get closer, he starts walking into the road. I start panicking. There was no time to slow down, and I could not swerve to avoid him for fear of rolling the truck. My friend and I start screaming. Just as we were about to hit what I thought was a man, it jumps and has fucking wings. It jumps over the entire truck. It was only visible for a second, but I can still remember it clear as day. It had the body of a man from the head to the waist, but from its waist down was hairy. The wings were also dark. The feet were the worst. Instead of human feet, there were these horrible talons, similar to that of a chicken, but also dark and hairy. The best comparison I can make is that it looked like a human-sized gargoyle. I know this sounds like a load of shit, and I probably wouldn't believe me either, but I swear it's the truth. In total honesty, I wish it wasn't true. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. If my friend hadn't seen it as well, I would think I'd gone crazy. On a side note, in the past few years since that night, I've met one other person that has seen the same, if not extremely similar, creature. So, I'm driving home, and it's a clear, quiet night. The road is mostly empty due to it being late, and I'm eager to get home and relax. As I pass one of the churches about half a mile from my house, I see a huge cylindrical object hanging in the air directly over the steeple of the church. I do a huge double take and slow my car down to a complete stop, staring in disbelief at this massive airship just idly hanging over this church. Immediately, the first words from my mouth were, "What the fuck is that?" I'm no expert when it comes to airplanes or blimps, but I had seriously never seen anything like this. It was kind of a long tube with weird vent-like protrusions that acted as beacons of light. This threw odd shadows on the rest of the airship to where I couldn't make out the rest of it, aside from a strange blinking red light at the very top of it. The light was blinking at odd intervals, kind of like a radio tower. It was completely and absolutely silent. No sounds of motors or propellers. I watched it for a full minute and a half before the thing started to float, almost like a balloon would, to one side of the church. Then, without warning, it took off with incredible speed, just 0 to what seemed like 1,000 miles an hour in an instant. I watched it as it zoomed off into the night sky. I banged a U-turn and tried to follow it for a bit, but it had disappeared into the night sky. I don't know what I saw. I don't understand what I saw. I watch those alien shows sometimes and see the kind of people they get to talk about the alien spaceships they've seen, and I can firmly say that I'm not that kind of person. I don't like talking about it in mixed company because of how weird and unbelievable the story is. I have tried rationalizing and coming up with solutions, none of which make any sense.